Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 276 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I am excited that you are here. And excited for this episode is a mild understatement. When you get an email from my guest today saying, hi, I am the author of Peak Performance, the co-author of Peak Performance and the author of The Practice of Groundedness, you get a little bit excited. And when that author says to you, would you be interested in having me on your show? Do you know what my response to him was? Heck yes, with about 50 exclamation points, because I have wanted to interview my guest today for a long time. He is one of the great thinkers in our space. We are so lucky to have this guy guiding us along the way. And as you will hear me say in this interview, his book, The Practice of Groundedness, is the book of every book I've read that I felt spoke to me more than any other. It will be my number one recommendation, I think, this year to Gap 4 runners and people, especially if you're that type A driven person like I am. I thoroughly enjoyed it today. I loved my conversation with Brad Stulberg, who I am excited to welcome to the Running for Real podcast, although honestly a little bit sad that it's taken 276 episodes to get here. But here we are. And Brad, we just talk about some really interesting things today. This is really going to help you to feel more fulfilled in your life, to of course feel grounded, as the book is entitled, and to talk about many of the concepts that we as runners tend to struggle with. This is a fantastic episode, and I'm really excited to have Brad on the show. So we'll just take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, and we will be right to this episode with Brad Stulberg. Thank you to Inside Tracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. This holiday season, the best gifts are personal. And there's nothing more personal than the gift of good health. Whether your loved one runs, bikes, hikes, plays sports, or simply wants to improve their wellness, Inside Tracker is the most personalized way to make sure their body stays in it for the long haul. Gift cards and clothes are impersonal and expected, let alone being maybe something we don't need and not as good for the environment. So why not get your loved ones a gift that is truly special and unique to them? This Black Friday, you can save $200 on Inside Tracker's Ultimate Plan plus free Inner Age. It is the most comprehensive way to get personalized insight into their body's well-being. No two people achieve optimal health the same way. Age, genes, nutrition, lifestyle, it all plays a part. But no matter who you're shopping for, Inside Tracker's personalized nutrition and performance system provides the most detailed analysis of their biomarker data from blood, DNA, lifestyle, and fitness tracking. Inside Tracker gives them the power to live a healthier, longer life through concrete, personalized action plans consisting of proven, science-backed recommendations. I have been talking about Inside Tracker for many years as a way to look after my body and to take care of my health, and this is a great time for you to do it. This is actually the best time of the whole year to sign up. So if you have been on the fence, this is the time to go for it. Head to insidetracker.com/Tina to save $200 on Inside Tracker's Ultimate Plan plus a free Inner Age and enjoy 25% off site-wide to give the gift of personalized health. You have heard me talk about Inside Tracker. If you have been waiting, if you've been thinking about it, this is the time to check in on how your body is doing, especially as we go into the winter months, to make sure you are doing what you can to optimize your health. So use code Tina Muir Gift, that's TINAMUIRGIFT. If you want to use that special code, that's TINAMUIRGIFT, Tina Muir Gift, to save $200, or you can go to insidetracker.com/Tina. Go check it out. Brad, welcome to the Running For Real podcast. As someone who has been dodging me for many years, I am very excited to have finally trapped you and got you on this show. So welcome.
It is good to be trapped, Tina. I'm glad to be here with you.
Yeah, this is you've been requested many times, and I've never managed to grab you until now. So I'm excited for this. I would say I'm prepared for this. That said, we are going to go in a different direction and different conversation to other shows you've been on, as there have been quite a few that people may have heard before. But to start with, so you have a regular column in Outside Online. You've written for the New York Times, Sports Illustrated, Forbes. You've sold hundreds of thousands of books. And your latest book, The Practice of Groundedness, makes people maybe start this episode thinking, oh, here we go again. Another person who has their life totally together. And they're going to remind me of just how successful they are, how little I have done with my time. What would you like to say back to those people?
Well, that is your assumption, and perhaps I'll prove you wrong throughout the rest of the conversation.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I say that for the listeners because the book, The Practice of Groundedness, is pretty much the complete opposite of that in terms of it is working with people who always feel like they've never done enough, and showing them that, it's okay to step off the hamster wheel. I mentioned to you, Brad, and I'll say it, I'm sure, many, many more times. I honestly can say I don't think I've ever read a book that has spoken to me quite as directly as this one does. So, it is an amazing read, and one I did in like 3 days, which says something with 2 kids under 4. I made lots of time for it. So we're going to dive into some of the concepts today. But do you want to maybe start by just maybe giving your synopsis of what the book is before we dive into some of the things that I think will relate to the listeners?
So the main thesis of the book is that many people these days, regardless of gender identity, regardless of race, regardless of career, regardless of hobbies, are feeling a constant coming up short in a sense of never enoughness. So I need to achieve more, I need to do more, I need to be more, and only then will I be content, only then will I be fulfilled. In the book, I call this heroic individualism. And I define it as a game of one-upmanship against self and others, where measurable achievement is the main arbiter of success. And importantly, and unfortunately, the goalpost is always 10 yards down the field. So you tell yourself, if I just go under 3 hours for the marathon, then I'll be content. If I just hit a bestseller list, then I'll be fulfilled. If I just marry this person or get promoted to this role, then I'll be whole. And that kind of thinking does trap us on this treadmill of thinking that we're going to get there, but never really being where we are. And as a result, never really getting there. So that's the main problem that the book addresses. And then the solution that it proposes is what I've come to call groundedness, which is a sense of strength and stability from where you are. And groundedness does not eliminate goal setting or striving or even ambition. But what it does is it situates it so that it's more durable and sturdy because it comes from a place of enoughness. So therefore, it is not fragile. The more the insecure or the feeling of a deep need to achieve something, the more anxiety is caught up in that pursuit. Whereas if you can start from a place of saying, hey, this is who I am, this is where I am, this might not be where I want to go, but it's enough right now, then it takes the load off. And not only do you feel better, but you also tend to perform better.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, beautifully said there. And we're going to get into some of the, when you listen to someone saying something like that, as my listeners know, there tends to be questions that come up as someone's saying that, like, yeah, but yeah, but so we're going to go through some of the potential yeah buts that people will come up with in the rest of this episode. And I want to start with the fact that you mentioned there about, if I can get this, then I will. And you called that arrival fallacy. Is that correct? Is that
correct? And that's not just my term. That's a widely known term in behavioral science. And it's just that. It says, I'll arrive when, yet you never actually arrive.
Yes. So then with that, you mentioned about getting under 3 hours in the marathon, and we hear that a lot in running. If I can just get that BQ, if I can just run a PR. And as someone who was a professional runner who now is still reasonably high level, but way down from where I was, I see it all the time where people say that to me, like, oh, I just want to be able to do this. And I say to them, like, look, I've got to, as high as maybe not you can go, but close to the top. And I wasn't there. You're never going to get there. And then it just not ever sinking in. I want to address the fact that people think, okay, so if I have groundedness, does that mean I'm not going to have drive? I'm not going to be motivated. And maybe many people think I need that angry, football coach, you might have got to do this, or I'm not going to get anything done. I'm going to stop. I'm going to quit. I need to be hungry for it. What would be your response there?
Well, a few things. The first is that groundedness, as I said, does not get rid of drive. So if you think of two mountain climbers that both really want to get to the top of a mountain, and one climber is extremely worried about whether or not they'll make it to the top. And they're thinking about the selfies that they'll take from the top, how they'll finally be able to say that they've summited this mountain, what their friends and family and colleagues will think of them when they're at the top. The other climber equally wants to get to the top, but is very focused on taking consistent small steps and really being where they are, and ideally even enjoying the view from the side of the mountain. Now, both of those climbers might make it to the top, but the latter has a significantly higher chance of coming back and continuing to climb, because the latter person won't burn out because they're really grounded where they are. So that's one way to conceptualize this. The other way is if you play not to lose, you tend not to perform as well as playing to win. And there's all sorts of research I discuss in the book that basically says that when we are feeling unmoored or frantic or we need to do something and then we'll finally be content, generally you do that from a place of playing not to lose. Versus if you already feel hey, I am where I am, I'm enough right now, and I want to get better, then you get to start playing to win. And as I said, not only is playing to win more fun, but also it's associated with a greater chance of getting into flow, or that elusive state where everything's clicking and you're in the zone. And it's also associated with more sustainable peak performance. So this isn't about ratcheting down that drive. Again, it's about situating it so that it's not so frantic and all over the place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Tina of 2016 hears that loud and clear. What about someone who says, well, I don't have a choice to, I don't have the opportunity to step back and look at it that way. This is my one shot to get this time. I have a crazy busy life. My family has given me 12 weeks to really go for my goal. And, if I'm going to do this, then, everything I've ever seen has showed me that I've got to show how much I want it and dig deep.
I'd say that there's nothing wrong with that, and that it's a very admirable thing to do. I just wouldn't tie too much of my self-worth or identity to the achievement of that goal.
Mm-hmm. You talked also about how we tend to favor excitement over ease, which comes at the expense of joy and ease. Joy and ease, did I write that down right? Maybe not. So I would love to talk about how that relates to setting goals. You mentioned it earlier about the selfies I'll take from the top of the mountain, the what I'm going to say on social media about things. But let's talk about that, how we tend to rush things and how common you see that within running as well as other areas.
Yeah, so we do often confuse excitement and ease, even though they're very different things. So excitement is generally forward-looking. So it's exactly what you said. It's like getting super stoked about a big goal, or feeling that rush in your body of how great it's going to feel if you nail that workout in 2 weeks or you PR that race. Excitement is what you get when you sign up for a big event and you tell all your friends. Ease, on the other hand, is what you actually get when you're present in the middle of a workout and your sense of self just kind of melts away because you're just flowing into the run. Those are very different things. Excitement, if you actually feel physiologically what that's like, is a lot closer to anxiety than to happiness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas ease is a lot closer to happiness than anxiety. So excitement in my book publishing world is the day the book comes out and you're trying to get on the bestseller list and you're monitoring your sales rank and it feels so great. But it actually doesn't feel that great if you pause. It feels a lot like anxiety. It's like this constant wanting to check and wanting to push. Whereas ease in my book world is sitting in a library with 6 friends talking about the ideas in the book. To me, that latter is true happiness. That former is just a crazy dopamine bender. And that is just one example, but we get this so frequently in our lives when we are so forward thinking. Again, heroic individualism, the goalpost is always 10 yards down the field. So we're always thinking about that next thing and how that next thing's going to make us feel. And if there's negative association, well, we know what that is. We call that anxiety. If there's positive association, that's excitement. But again, physiologically, it's very close to anxiety, whereas ease is a lot more situated and grounded.
That is so, I know you talked about it, but that I love that explanation of that. And that is very true in terms of when we think of moments that mean a lot to us, and that you're able to go to bed that night feeling, oh, that was just great. It's usually, that sense of calm and at peace and
right,
filled up, but not bubbling over.
And then we can also zoom out to think of a whole training cycle or a season.
Mm-hmm.
So excitement is that runner that has to do it in 12 weeks, and every workout is like do or die. Yeah. And if you nail a workout, you're going to be happy all day. And if you don't miss a workout, if you miss a workout or you don't hit your numbers, you're going to be questioning it all day. That is like a very excitable runner. Mm-hmm. Whereas a more easeful runner is someone who can look at the entire process of improvement, of self-discovery, of learning about themselves as a person, as an athlete, and kind of settle into the training. So, of course, in the book, I tell the story of the greatest runner to ever live, Eliud Kipchoge, who is the ultimate embodiment of ease. He's quoted in his coach saying that the way that he gets so fast is by making progress slowly by slowly.
Yeah.
He never takes any single workout too seriously. He is really content with settling into the process. Now, Kipchoge clearly pushes hard. He's won more major marathons than anyone, I think. He's run under 2 hours in the Nike exhibition. So it's not like groundedness has zapped his drive. But what it's done is it has allowed him to use all that energy for the thing itself, not the thinking about the thing or dreading the thing or hoping about the thing.
Yes, so true. And, when you think about those moments, you said there about like nailing a workout or like every workout is do or die. It very much feels like if you do it, you're on top of the world for, a little while. You're on top of the world. You're, really happy, but then it just takes one bad run or one thing to make you come crashing down. And I would love to transition this now into how does this relate to what this kind of cultural reckoning that the running world is going through right now? Like we've seen a lot of conversations coming back up again and again about the culture of the way that body image and weight is a focus within our sport, particularly for women, but also that gray area that a lot of coaches kind of find themselves rubbing up against to try and get the most out of their athletes. So when it comes to coaches, let's talk about that for a minute. Can a coach be favoring excitement over ease with their athletes, and how does that affect the athlete?
It's a wonderful question and such an important one. So I think the simplest way to conceptualize and talk about this is there are coaches that treat athletes like parts in a system. Mm-hmm. And if that part breaks, they just replace it. And there are coaches that want to partner with an athlete and go on a long journey with them. The coaches that treat athletes like parts, they can throw 100 eggs against the wall, and as long as one doesn't break, they have an Olympic medalist. If the other 99 end up with eating disorders and stress fractures, or the female triad or body dysmorphia if they're men, it doesn't matter, because the one egg that didn't break won a gold medal. That's not a kind of coach I want to work with. It's not a kind of coach I want my partner Caitlin to work with, my son Theo to work with. Whereas other coaches will say, hey, I want to make you as good of a runner as possible over 10 years, over 15 years. And I think that, again, when we talk about excitement versus ease, there's also, what does it mean to be really efficient and effective now versus what does it mean to be efficient and effective over the course of a decade? And those often look very different. Like if you said, Brad, you've got like 8 weeks to run your best race with no base of training, whatever, what I would do would have to be really reckless. Like I do a lot of strength training now. I'd have to run on the edge of a stress fracture, undernourish myself to try to get leaner, and then I could run a really fast race in 8 weeks. But if you were to say, Brad, like I want you to have a career doing that, I'd at most last a year before suffering from physical and or mental injury. So I think that it comes down again to this time scale. It's like in a single workout, sure, there's a lot of excitement. In a single training cycle, you can throw a bunch of eggs against the wall. But if you want to take a longer term view, then I think it changes things quite drastically. Getting out of kind of concepts, and if I put my diehard runner hat on from, 10 years ago when I was super into competing in the sport as an athlete, it's like, yeah, you're faster when you're lighter, but you're slower when you're on the couch with a stress fracture. And I think that it's really important to remember that. And then also at what cost to your psyche? So it's kind of a convoluted answer, but I think that, maybe the running world is reckoning with the difference between a parts are parts approach to performance and coaching versus more of a sustainable relationship model. And,
so true.
You take a coach like Brett, and I have no problem saying names. You take a coach like Brett Sutton in triathlon or Alberto Salazar in running, and it's very clear that's a parts are parts model. Mm-hmm. Whereas you take a coach like Trent Stellingworth in running or Matt Dixon in triathlon, and it's an entirely different model.
Thank you to Athletic Greens for sponsoring this episode of the Running For Real podcast. Athletic Greens is the health and wellness company that makes comprehensive daily nutrition really simple. With so many stresses in our lives, it can be difficult to maintain effective nutritional habits and give our body the nutrients it needs to survive. Busy schedules, poor sleep, exercise, environment, work stress, or simply not eating enough of the right foods can leave us deficient in key areas. AG1 by Athletic Greens is the category-leading superfood product which brings comprehensive and convenient daily nutrition to everyone. Keeping up with the research, knowing what to do, taking a bunch of pills and capsules is hard on the stomach and hard to keep up with. So to help each one of us be at our best, they simplify the path to better nutrition by giving you the one thing with all the best things. I have been taking Athletic Greens AG1 for about 2 years now, and Honestly, I can't imagine my life without it. It is the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. I've mentioned this many times. I take it with me when I travel, and I take it when I travel, which most things when we travel, we tend to forget. And even if we take it, we don't do it. I am obsessive about getting in my athletic greens, and that is because one tasty scoop of athletic greens contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food source ingredients, including a multivitamin, multi-mineral, probiotic, green superfood blend, all in one convenient daily serving. The special blend of high-quality, bioavailable ingredients in a scoop of AG1 work together to fill those nutritional gaps in your diet, support energy and focus, aid with gut health and digestion, support a healthy immune system. Effectively, you're replacing multiple products or pills with one delicious drink. So we are at Running for Real. We have a special code just for you to make it easy. Athletic Greens can give you this immune supporting product along with a free 1 year supply of vitamin D, something we all need going through the winter, and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase by going to athleticgreens.com/Tina. That's athleticgreens.com/Tina to take control of your health and give AG1 a try. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think this is such an important thing that we need to dive into deeper to have these discussions and talk about it, because the ripples, while it affects elite athletes to the most extreme examples, knowing that their bodies are on show and, watched by thousands. I mean, I've talked before about how I used to stand on the start line of races and feel like I was the big one, even though I was just the same as everyone else. But, I'm also thinking back to bringing back, you said about, excitement feeling like a lot like anxiety, and ease being, Elliot and very calm and steady, and about, workouts going well, bringing a good high, bringing excitement, bringing feeling good. But also when things don't go well, when we're in this culture that we are in right now of, as you said, people viewing athletes as like machines or parts. I remember when a workout didn't go well for me, that was a time when, you needed something to control, to blame, to change, to fix, so that it couldn't possibly be, there had to be a reason why your workout didn't go well or why you were feeling tired that day. And so weight was an easy thing to focus on, or eating, what I was eating was a very easy thing to control when things felt out of control. When obviously when you run, there's hundreds of factors that come into and affect any one day. So I think there's so many layers to this, but is there anything else you want to add about just, what we're going through right now? I mean, it's kind of going in waves, but it seems to be coming up quite often about this, change that needs to be made, particularly towards athletes, but also as I said, the ripple effects going to the recreational runners who look up to those athletes.
Oh yeah, there's so much to unpack there. Well, for the recreational runners that look up to those athletes, I would just remind yourself that you are a recreational runner. You don't have the same nutrition team, sports science team, coaching staff, and the stakes are lower in that you are not paying your bills and putting food on the table based on your performance. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, unfortunately, as you pointed out, a lot of what happens at the professional level is either what I'll call fake, in the sense that it's fueled by performance enhancing drugs, or if it's not fake, it is extremely dangerous to the individual's physical and psychological health. So if you are trying to have a role model that is an alien and try to compete at the same level as an alien, you're going to end up burning yourself out and hurting yourself. So that's the first thing that I'd say about making those comparisons. And then at the elite level, it is so tricky because there is such a fine line between what's healthy and what's not healthy. And when elite performance and kind of holistic health can at times edge up against each other. And that's why I think it's so important, if you're going to compete at that level, to find a coach that doesn't have this necessarily all figured out, because I don't think anyone does, but is very aware of it and is constantly bringing it to the forefront and is conscious of these trade-offs. And then the other thing that I'd say is, a lot of athletes get criticized about having, a platform outside of the sport. So starting a fashion company or a clothing line or whatever it is. I actually think from a individual health standpoint, that's a wonderful thing, because it takes some of the pressure off of the performance.
Yeah.
Now, the flip side to that is, most people, when they're at the very top of their game, are only doing one thing, and it's the sport itself. So these are really, really, really tricky trade-offs. And the best that I can say is, again, to have a coach that you can not say, what should I do? Because I don't think there's a clear answer, but that is willing to dive into and wrestle with those trade-offs.
Yes.
I mean, I get them in my own life on such a smaller scale. I am so far from an elite athlete, but I'm a national class author, let's call it. And every day I have a trade-off. Do I push harder to promote my book, or do I sleep, or do I spend time with my son, or am I taking a half an hour to shut down before dinner so I can actually be present for dinner instead of still in my head thinking about the book? And I wish I had a magic wand that would tell me what to do. I don't. All you can do is kind of pay attention to what you're doing and how you're feeling and what you're getting as a result, and know that these things can change over time.
Yes, feel so much of that. And a lot of the book goes into how to work through those, I don't even know what the term would be, challenges, I suppose. And actually, that is really the first place I have read about how to, you talked a lot about, I laugh at myself quite a lot, and I'm sure you experience this, as you said you have a son in Theo. I find myself sometimes playing with my daughter, and a thought will come through I should check my email just to see if whoever replied. And then I'll say, no, you're with Chloe. Just be with her. And then I'll say, okay, be with her. So then a few minutes later, she's playing with something. And I'm like, okay, well, now she's distracted, so you can just go check it. And I'm like, no, you said you would be there, stay there. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, oh, but I really need to go look up a recipe because I've got to start thinking about dinner tonight. And then eventually one of those excuses or reasons, I leave and go check. And while my computer's open, I might as well, check my email. And it is, as you said, a constant thing of okay, what am I giving up here every time I do that? But also in the book, you addressed how it's okay to feel that way, that things have been designed that way to hook you in and to make you feel like you should always be, I can't remember the term you used about, you said about optimization, about we've got to be always scheming, strategizing, thinking about the past or the future, or we're going to miss out on something. So I felt like that area was really, really well covered in the book. And I would love for you to maybe just spend a few minutes talking about if someone else recognizes that part, maybe going up the stairs and needing to check their phone and being like, okay, I know this is not a healthy behavior. I should be able to walk up the stairs without checking social media. Is there something you would say to someone who says, I get it, I know it's not good for me, but I can't stop?
Yeah. So the way that you described how this manifests in your own life when you're playing with your daughter, I think is a really good program, if you will, to learn how to back off. And it's not like a switch that you flip, because it is a strong habit, energy, or pattern to want to constantly lean into those devices and whatnot. So just recognizing that, hey, this urge is here and I'm not going to react to it. This urge is here, I'm not going to react to it. Now, there are some things that you can do to make that easier. One is to carry around a hardcover notebook, and that way you can jot stuff down. Because sometimes you truly have an important thought. It's like, oh my gosh, this is the exact intro to the huge podcast I'm about to do with Eliud Kipchoge. But you don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
But if you have your phone and you write it down in your phone notes, well, the next thing you know, you're checking your email or your social media. Whereas if you have a notebook, you can just jot it down in the notebook, close the notebook, and then you unload your mind of having to hold on to the thought without engaging in your device. The second thing that can be really helpful is to think about having really rigid boundaries between what I'll call like work mind or device mind and non-device mind. So when I'm playing with my son or when I'm going hiking in the woods with my dog, I am not taking any phone computer with me. My computer just stays in the home office and never leaves this room. Because the more of it, those lines of, I guess what I would call like non-connected mind and connected mind get blurred, the harder it is to separate the two. Mm-hmm. And the last thing that I would say is to remember that doing the email or the social media or refreshing to check if someone commented on your post, that's always going to feel better in the moment than doing the work of refocusing on playing with your kid or listening to music or playing with your dog or even like getting intimate with your partner, you name it. Why? Because those hits of excitement are really powerful, just like anxiety. But if you do those things over and over and over again, you start to feel like crap.
Yeah.
So the analogy that I use in the book is we have brown rice pursuits in people in our lives, and we have peanut M&M pursuits in people in our lives. And peanut M&Ms always taste better on the first bite. But if you have a diet that the staple of it is peanut M&Ms, you're going to feel like shit at the end of the year. Whereas if the staple of your diet is a whole grain like brown rice, you'll probably feel pretty good. So much like you never have peanut M&Ms all over your house, constantly just in every single bowl on the countertops in every single room, we should treat the digital peanut M&Ms the same way.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and that was a really
But it's a practice. Like that's why the book is called, my publisher wanted to call it Grounded or Get Grounded. I'm like, but you don't just get grounded. Like you have to practice this stuff because it is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote the book on this and I struggle with that same conversation in my mind of, oh, hey, the book's only been out for 6 weeks or 7 weeks or 2 months. So that should give you permission to check your sales rank or to send a tweet about the book. And I can't control that thought, but I don't have to respond to it. I can just watch it, identify it, and just feel the urge. And eventually that urge subsides. And the better you get at riding those urges, the less hold they have over you.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so then just one more thing related to that. One thing that gave me a ton of relief reading it was that you said some of the clients you work with, you talk to them about having these blocks, much like what you talked about there, of undistracted, uninterrupted time for work and connection, and the rest of the day is kind of whatever. You can check things as much as you like or whatever is your vice of choice, I suppose. Can we talk about that just for a minute? Because I think that is also something that is misunderstood, myself included, in that I've talked actually with my therapist about this, of how in my head, again, playing with my daughter, like if I'm to be successful, I hate saying that, but that's honestly what is in my head.
How about you say if I'm to be present?
Okay, yeah. Present with my daughter, it has to be like an hour and then like, yes, I did it. Whereas he kind of reminded me, especially with, 16-month-old, it can be 5 minutes or it can be half an hour. Like it doesn't have to be 1 hour solid of you sitting there playing with her continuously, totally present, not thinking about anything else. So while this is a slightly different area in terms of the undistracted blocks, can you talk maybe about that it's okay if you do check multiple times at other points in the day?
Yeah. So trying to have a goal of just being present always, unless you're on like a camping trip, is really hard in the 21st century. And I think you set yourself up for a lot of failure and then a lot of self-judgment if you have such a goal. Whereas if you can identify the times and the pursuits that you want to be fully present for, block them off in chunks of time, as you said, anywhere from 5 minutes up to 2 hours. And then outside of those blocks, you can eat M&Ms until you vomit. That is the approach that I've seen work with my clients, because you start to have these little victories and your mind-body system learns that actually the brown rice is really fulfilling and good when you eat it. So the peanut M&Ms kind of they're not as enticing over time. So almost all my clients that have this issue of like frantic and frenetic activity in their life, we don't go on like 30-day phone fast or try to be present or have a digital Sabbath or anything like that. Those are effective. But what I find to be more effective is just to start with an hour and a half, 3 days a week. That's it. So I have them do the math and it comes out to 4.5 hours. I just want you to be present for 4.5 hours without the devices. And then the next week we go up to 6 hours. And then by about a month, again, the feedback loop is there where they've come to realize that actually, even though like checking my social media is really excitable in that moment, it feels so much better to do more and more of this deep focus work time. Mm-hmm. So I think a reasonable goal, I try not to hold anyone to a higher standard than I'd hold myself, is if I can have 3 blocks of deep work throughout the day, and those blocks can be anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, then that's perfect. And my own rule right now is that between 6 and 6:30, when I'm done for the day, my phone and my computer stay in the home office and they don't leave until the morning. And that's been really challenging for me. It's easier now that my son is 3.5 than when he was 16 months, because a 16-month-old is pretty boring. So like, that's like where there's got to be some self-compassion. And I'm not a parenting expert, but I'm so far from it. But what I'd say there, if for what it's worth, is I guess the way that I think about that situation is if I'm with my kid, I don't want to be also checking my email or social media or just mindlessly scrolling through my phone, because then they're observing me doing that. Yes. And that's what they're going to learn.
Yes. No,
but what I'd be happy to do is actually step in the other room and let the kid be unsupervised for 10 minutes and go do the thing. And I think our parenting culture is so concerned about like kids physically harming themselves that we say like, well, we have to be in the same room as the kids, so might as well like bring my laptop in the room. Mm-hmm. It's like, listen, unless there's sharp objects or bridges in your basement, your kid's not going to hurt themselves. And again, I don't want to get myself in trouble. They're, they're over the age where they're going to choke or what have you. Mm-hmm. But to me, it's less about like the device and kid. It's more about the device and the presence of a kid.
Thank you to Zencastr for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Zencastr is an all-in-one podcast production suite that gives you studio quality audio and video without needing all the technical know-how. It records each person locally, which means on their individual computer or device, then uploads this crystal clear audio and video right into the suite so you have high quality raw materials to work with. Now, if you are thinking about starting a podcast, maybe you have a podcast. It doesn't matter if you have 10 people that listen or 100,010. Podcasting remotely can be challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Zencastr's all-in-one web-based solution makes the process quick and painless the way it should be. If you know me, you've known that I've been podcasting for many years. I've tried all different platforms. I've tried all different types of things, and I am obsessed with Zencastr. I love it. I encourage everyone I know to use it because it is just so easy. Zencastr provides crystal clear sound and this gorgeous HD video. Not to mention, it is easy to use, especially for guests that aren't particularly tech savvy. There is nothing to download. They just click on the link and start recording. It is that simple. Zencastr is about making your podcast experience easy, and with everything from local recording to automatic post-productions in the tool, you don't have to leave your browser to get the episode done. I want you to have the same easy experience as I do for all my podcasting and content needs. If you go to zencastr.com/pricing and enter promo code running for real with the word for running for real, you will get 30% off your first 3 months. So go to zencastr.com/running for real. That's promo code running for real. You will get 30% off your order. Go to zencastr.com/running for real. Use promo code running for real. It's time to share your story. Yes, no, I'm with you there. And thankfully that's something I already follow through with in keeping it in the other room. And I will say, like, having the extra step, same as you, I leave my laptop in my office. So having to go up from our basement 2 flights of stairs can be enough to be off-putting of, I'll check that a bit later or whatever it may be. Thank you for explaining that. I think that's really helpful. And yeah, for the record, I have a 3.5-year-old as well. And I will say, yeah, it's a lot easier to be present with her than it is with the younger one. Now,
yeah, so I'm so glad you brought that up. But I do think the main point there is identify blocks of time when you want to do fully present work, play, connection, and then follow through on those blocks and increase very gradually, because the best mechanism to develop a habit is to realize how good it feels to do that kind of fully present activities and how good it feels at the end of the day. Something else I see with a lot of coaching clients is on days when they're kind of running from one thing to the next and multitasking and they don't have this time, is they get home and they feel like they're super tired, but they didn't actually do anything.
Yes, so
which
true.
is a really shitty way to feel. And then you tend to be short with your partner or with your kids. And it just is like a vicious cycle. Whereas just 1 hour of feeling like you moved an important endeavor forward not only is good for that endeavor, but it also helps you feel fulfilled and more at ease the rest of the day. So
true. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a really important point. Now, I would love to go into, you talked about your OCD and how you were going through times where you were, very outwardly successful. We've mentioned the Wall Street Journal, NPR, Forbes, but your anxiety was like crushing you on the inside. So good example of we never know what's going on underneath. But also, like, you talked about how social media, we tend to selectively share. We share all the good things. And we've talked a lot about this on this podcast about people feeling alone. That was actually the impetus behind this show. But what would you say is the alternative here? Like, how, I would love to hear your perspective on how would our health look if there was a lot more sharing of the negative when, we want, studies have shown that optimism is good for our health. And you obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, you mentioned in the book there's a few potential negatives of viewing the world optimistically in terms of we need to be able to accept what's going on, COVID being a good example of that. But yeah, if everything we share, or if not everything, if there was a lot more negativity shared in terms of what we're going through, being vulnerable, sharing the struggles, do you think we would be in a better place?
I think it's less about the sharing and more about the medium on which it's shared.
Okay.
So if social media just becomes like a window glass shopping experience for people tweeting about their anxiety, depression, obsessions, body image disorders, and on, I'm not sure that would be any better than things are today, which is to say it would just be what it is.
Yeah.
I think the issue is that social media cannibalizes the time and energy spent forging a group of your neighbors or 5 people in your community that you can sit down with in person and share with them your real struggles and have them touch your shoulder and tell you it's going to be okay. So I actually think that sharing on social media in a more vulnerable way is good because it humanizes people that are otherwise seen as like having all their shit together all the time. But in terms of actually getting help, I don't think that too many girls struggling with anxiety got through their anxiety disorder because Simone Biles shared it. I think it helped normalize it. But if those girls are just on social media all day, then they're not developing the actual relationships in real life that help ease anxiety. And I'm only using girls because I think more young women look up to Simone Biles, but you could say the same thing for men and Marty Fish, the tennis player. So it is good to normalize, but I think that there's a big difference between like awareness and getting rid of stigma and actually doing something about it and or creating communities that can truly help. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Absolutely. There are stories of people that have felt so alone and like no one can understand them. And perhaps their disorder prevents them from wanting to leave their house or be in public. So the only place they have connection is through the internet. And in those cases, I think it is an absolute good. I just think that it should be seen as a tool that can be useful in some cases, but not in others. And I think the gold standard way to be vulnerable is to do it in person with people who you've taken the time and energy to build a relationship with. Yeah. Now, again, I talk about this in the book. It's back to like ease versus excitement. Well, excitement is getting a bunch of retweets and likes and shares and feeling like an internet celebrity. That's a lot of dopamine. That's a lot of sugar and peanut M&Ms. I've been there. Ease is knowing the 4 people that you can really count on that live within 3 miles of you, even if they're not verified on Twitter, and they'll do nothing to advance your career or your status. So we've got to learn how to choose ease over excitement. That's ultimately, I think, the best way to think about that conundrum.
Yeah, no, I very.
And there's also a lot of performative vulnerability on social media. So I think what happened was Brene Brown, who's a researcher at University of Houston's done this great work to bring vulnerability to the forefront of like the popular culture or the conversation. And I think what happened is the pendulum used to be so far in the direction of, look how perfect my airbrushed life is. Look at this supreme veggie burger and sweet potato fries that I'm eating in my size 2 dress, or if I'm a guy with my 40-inch biceps. And it swung all the way in the opposite direction to, these are all the things that I'm despairing about. And I think that both of those things can be really performative. So people often ask me like, well, how do you tell the difference? And as a receiver of that information, I try to give people the benefit of the doubt always. But if I am sharing something and it feels good to share it, then in the moment, it's probably more performative than real. Because like truly being vulnerable should make you feel somewhat uncomfortable, which again is why I think it's so much more powerful to have local communities in which you can do these things. Sorry, that was a long answer. I hope it's clear.
No. All of it very important. And I would call myself Brené's #1 fan, but I imagine a lot of people think that. Actually, my husband always says that I'm in her cult. So he always says that if I disappear one day, he knows where I've gone. All of that was interesting and helpful. And I've never heard it said that way in terms of if it makes you feel good when you share it, it probably is performative. And to be totally on that note, totally honest, I think I am definitely guilty of that at times, because I'm thinking back to some things that I have shared over that have been what I thought were vulnerable, and they were in some ways, but I kind of knew even going into it that I wasn't revealing any new information, and I knew that people would appreciate it. But with that, as much as that makes me feel really uncomfortable to say it, when people read things like that, there's a lot of people that often say like, oh, that I really needed to hear that today, or that was really meaningful, or I know exactly what that feels like. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone. How do we understand that then? If it is still helping people, but yes, technically kind of is performative, because I hate saying this, but like you kind of know it's a win.
Yeah, well, that's the issue. I think it's really, really tricky, and you're getting into the nuance and like the it depends nature of this particular topic. So the it's a win is such a succinct way to put it. Because what I was thinking is saying there's feeling good because you're getting something off your shoulders that's like getting rid of the gap between how you present yourself and your actual self. And then there's feeling good because you're like, if I tweet something about my depression or my experience with an eating disorder, it's going to get 1,000 retweets and that's going to feel great. And it's the latter thing that concerns me a little bit, because then we're almost like romanticizing or taking these really tough things and making them like charms on a bracelet that we wear.
Yeah.
Or we're connecting our identity to those things, when in fact, like the only tweet, well, I can't speak for an eating disorder. I've never experienced one, but the only tweet really for depression is like, depression fucking sucks. Like, be patient and get help. And I've also probably been guilty of the like, hey, it can happen to anyone. And I also think maybe a difference is like the use of I or me in there. So depression can happen to anyone. Be patient, be kind to yourself, get help. You're not broken. Like, these are challenging times is very different than like when I was depressed, I was patient and broken and I got better and you can too.
But then isn't there another element that I guess the first point is you're not saying you or I or anything, you're just kind of stating some things. But I feel like a lot of what, I don't know where I would have learned this, but I've been told is that you should always just share about your experience because you can't speak for anyone else. So yeah, what do you think about that?
I think it's really tough. I can only give you my heuristic. Like, I'd be lying to say that like there's a like a yes or no boilerplate answer. If there was, I would give it. So my heuristic is, if I'm going to share something about my struggles with obsessive compulsive disorder, which is just a bad anxiety disorder, and depression that I experienced, I don't do it if the reason I'm doing it is because I think it will gain retweets or likes. If I think it's going to help someone in that moment, I do it. If in that moment I'm like, I want a popular post, I don't do it. So it's teasing out that intention and then not judging yourself, because what you also don't want to do is become that aware and be like, all right, I'm going to do this big post on my depression or my substance abuse disorder or eating disorder, and it's going to do so great. And then you catch yourself, you're like, you asshole, you're so shallow that you're just using this. How about instead you catch yourself and you're like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I'm really longing for the feeling of being relevant or known or loved. Where can I find that in my life that's not on a screen?
Yes. Oh, thank you.
Whereas if you're like, hey, like, I don't know, whatever the case is, like, I am doing this purely to help someone else. And that, or not, nothing's ever pure, but like predominantly to help someone else. And that is the driving force. And I'm feeling kind of tense because I haven't posted about my eating disorder or my depression in a while, but I'm going to do it anyways. That is so different than like, like it's time for a mental health tweet, because those always do well.
Yeah. Yes.
So maybe that helps unpack it a little.
It does, and I appreciate the therapy session here, trying to work through why.
No, this is like really, really challenging stuff, and I do ultimately think that like, and it's also tricky. In everyone says this, but I think it's real. I think it's trickier for folks like you and myself, who social media is like a core part of the work that you do. Because then it's like, this is my job. This is not me. I think for someone who works a job where their professional success and income is not based on any social media, which is the vast, vast, vast majority of people, then I would err against like, just do the real thing in real life. Who gives a shit how many Twitter followers you have? Like, my goal in writing is to have my books become so well known, not because I want to be famous, but because then I'd give myself permission to get off of all social media.
Yep.
So that's the only reason I'm there. And like, don't get me wrong. I think like, we probably came across each other on social media. We were joking, like maybe we'll record an Instagram thing after this. Like there are benefits, but still like I'm doing it to market my work. Ideal would be to have 100,000 person mail list and just be able to like have the work market itself. Because social media is really tough. And I think that when you're creative and it's a part of your job, in a way, it's even tougher. Because you can say it's just my job and it's just marketing for my job. But if your job is like your thoughts or ideas, or in the case of an athlete, like inspiration that people get from your body doing cool stuff, it's very hard to keep that separate from who you are.
Well, and also what we talked about earlier about checking. I mean, that's often the kind of discussion I have in my own head is that like, oh, someone might have responded to something and they're in a really tough, I've had people reach out to me who are in a really dark and scary place who I've given, I shouldn't say this, but I've given my contact for because I'm genuinely like concerned about them. But, I can justify that in my head and say, well, what if someone like that has reached out? Or what if someone really needs me to see this? So yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because it's also easy to forget that, as you said, most of the population doesn't think about these things. And I think that is where I have conversations with people within the Running for Real community about how they say they just view social media differently to me. Whereas I see our mutual friend Mario, who removed his social media, and I think, oh, damn it, like I want to do that so bad. But I feel like I can't. But then at the same time, I forget that most people listening and most of the population doesn't have that deeply entangled work-life relationship with social media. So, thank you for putting some words to that.
Yeah, it's something that I think about a lot myself. So it's tricky. There's a lot of nuance for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so moving on, as again, we're only talking to a very small group of the population, but at the beginning of that tangent that we went on, I talked about
Can I actually interject? Sorry, real quick, because I want to say one more thing, Tina, before we move on from the social media topic.
Yeah.
Because I don't want people to also give themselves a pass and be like, well, I don't have to worry about that because like I'm not a creator. I don't spend that much time on social media. Another way to think about it is when you think back, and this gets to the excitement, ease, or like the heroic individualism, groundedness distinctions. When you think back to like the best moment that you had of the last week or month or maybe year, has anyone on earth ever said it was when I posted that perfect Instagram picture and it got tons of likes? I've never come across anyone that's even considered something as wild as that. What do we say? It's when I was out hiking, when I was doing that race, when I was in that workout with my best friend, when I was making love with my partner, when I was playing with my child who was walking for the first time. No one ever looks back and says a really happy moment was having a viral post. So I think it's like really important to remember this. Yeah, I call it like getting sucked into social media brain. When you like get sucked into that world, because it's got this strong pull of excitement, it feels so good. But when you step out of that world, it's like you're out of the matrix, and the actual world is still so much more fulfilling and helps you be so much more grounded. So I think just like taking some of these perspective checks and asking yourself the question, if you look back at the last whatever period of time and you think about what's really good about it, do you ever recall like a viral social media post? So true. And then if the answer is no, it's like back to those time blocks, like perhaps limit the time that you're going to spend on those tools so that they stay in their place in your life.
Yeah, definitely. And then I also want to bring up with that, you mentioned in the book, so I just want to bring up as a further point with that, you said about how, and I know many people within my community will be thinking about this, social media, if it leads you to have that real in-person or like meaningful connection with others, that can also be something that is very positive, but if you get off social media to do it. I know a lot of people within the community, within our group, have become friends outside and have met up or have gone to visit one another, which is incredible. And it's that real in-person connection, but only because they have taken it off social media and made it into that one-on-one, just quality time together.
Yeah. So the research that you're talking about is just that. It shows that if social media is used as a way station, so a place to meet people with common interests, common struggles, this gets back to like the benefits of sharing about one's struggles. And then you take those relationships offline, or you take them to like the next level of intimacy. So maybe it's from social media to a phone call, or a phone call to a video chat, or a video chat to meeting up in person. Then social media has a positive predictor on one's sense of community. Whereas if you use social media as an end in and of itself, so that's the place you go for community, you don't build on anything there, then it has a negative correlation with one's sense of community, or an increase in one's sense of isolation. Now, those studies only look at social media as it relates to community and loneliness, or community and isolation. I think that what they don't look at are the kind of identity, self-worth type spirals you can get into on social media. So even if you're using social media to meet people and then you take the relationships offline, if too much of your identity or your mood is tied to how many followers you have, I still think it's not a very grounded thing. And I know this isn't going to make people want to get the book, because people don't like hearing this, but most people deep down inside, I think, know it's true. I certainly know it's true. Like when I have social media brain and I get too sucked in, and like I'm upset at night because a tweet about my book that I thought would do great didn't, that's like a real sign to me that I've been spending too much time on the internet and not enough time in the real world.
Yes. Well, thank you for being honest with that in terms of that. Okay, so then this has just been so insightful and even beyond what I already had learned and appreciated within the book. And I've really enjoyed exploring the concepts with you. So, Brad, is there anything else that you think is something we should bring up based on our conversation today, based on things that you felt were important in the book that often maybe people don't pick up and take into consideration as much as they should?
Thanks for asking. So you've done such a wonderful job wrestling with so many of the important and nuanced concepts in the book. I think the only thing that is worth adding is the importance of what I call non-dual thinking. And what this means is that traits that we often see as incontestably good or bad are very rarely so. So a trait like grit works really well until it gets in your way, because it prevents you from quitting something that has actually become harmful to you. Self-compassion works great until you completely release from self-discipline. Self-discipline works great until you have so much of it that you can't be kind to yourself. So in behavioral science, in the performance world, we often say that it's this or that, or this works and this doesn't. And I think it's helpful to try to reframe that as it's this and that. And this works until it gets in your way, and then that works. So the big example towards the end of the book is around self-discipline and self-compassion. In this genre of personal development writing, certainly in the genre of like peak performance and writing that's geared towards athletes, there tends to be these two schools that are very on the surface opposing. There's the Navy SEAL who writes the book all about self-discipline and waking up at 4 a.m. and pushing yourself and no excuses. And then there's the generally person writing from a more Eastern perspective about self-love and self-compassion, and let's all just hold hands and sing Kumbaya. And the truth is, you need both of those things to be sustainably excellent. So you need to marry that intense and that fierce self-discipline with intense and fierce self-compassion. Grit and quit. That's the other example that I gave. To have a truly long, fulfilling, high-performing, sustainable career and even life, you have to both be really gritty, but you also have to know when to quit. No one has ever made it through their lives without quitting something. Mm-hmm. And no one has ever accomplished a really fulfilling life without showing some degree of grit. So these things that on their face are seen as opposites are actually often complementary. And I think it's a really helpful way of thinking.
Oh, so good. Yes. And such a great point to bring up, something that I actually hadn't ever thought about until you brought it up within the book. So I appreciate you. That was one of the questions I was going to get to, but we ran out of time. So I appreciate you mentioning that. And yeah, the way that we need to change our perspective of, always seeing something as a positive or always seeing something as a negative. And you mentioned about quitting there, and that's obviously the most used example of where, like, I never quit or never quit, like, don't give up, but I don't know what you do and don't know about me, but I quit running in 2016. I wasn't sure if I would ever do it again. And it was one of the scariest things I ever did. But I mean, it was 1,000,000% the right decision for me. And I felt like it took more courage to step away than to continue chasing that arrival fallacy or chasing finish lines as I was. So I definitely understand that on a personal level. And I appreciate you bringing that up as well. Okay, so Practice of Groundedness, a transformative path to success that feeds, not crushes your soul. Where can people go find it, and where can people go follow along with you in the future?
Thanks for asking. So the book is available wherever books are sold. So independent bookstores, love to support them. They should have it. If they don't, please ask them to order it. Mm-hmm. If convenience is a huge factor, or if you're price sensitive, the book is also on Amazon, and it tends to be somewhat discounted there. And then you can also get it from like a big box bookseller such as Barnes and Nobles. So pretty much wherever you get books, or wherever you personally choose to get your books. Mm-hmm. And in terms of me on the internet, I think the best place to learn more about myself and my work is probably just my website, which is just www.bradstulberg.com.
Yep. Okay. Well, I will put links in the show notes for people. And I'm glad you resisted the urge to say your Twitter or anything else. Shows that it's working. But I appreciate our conversation. I appreciate all the work that you've done. And I've admired you from afar from a while. So this is a real honor to get to talk to you. So thank you very much.
It was wonderful speaking to you as well, Tina. It's so clear that you really try to live this stuff day in and day out, and you wrestle with these concepts on such a deep level. So the honor was mine. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, friends. Just a quick message to say a big thank you to the Running for Real team. While I may be the face of Running for Real and the voice behind the podcast, there are a group of people who are working tirelessly to provide everything that runners could need within our community to make our community stronger, better, and evolve and grow and learn from one another. We are working really hard to make Running for Real the place we believe it can be within our community. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone on our team. That is Victoria, Stacy, Sandy, Sally, Maria, Kelsey, Kat, Jeremy, and Erica. I appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work that you put in. Now let's get back to the show. Wow. I loved that conversation. There was so much in there that related to me, that I feel relates to you. Just lessons, lesson after lesson after keyword after key take. It was just full of informative, helpful, wise words and decision. I particularly love what we were talking about with the excitement over ease. I had never thought about things that way, but that impacted me and has changed the way that I am approaching my life. So I want to thank Brad for that and for joining us today. I will be seeing if I can get Brad on the show regularly because he's just such a great thinker that can help us all. So be sure to go get yourself a copy of his book. It is absolutely fantastic. The Practice of Groundedness. There will be lots of links in the show notes for you to get yourself a copy of that. Now, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors for today. Athletic Greens, you can get a 1-year free supply of vitamin D plus 5 free travel packs with your purchase. I cannot recommend Athletic Greens anymore. 75 whole food source ingredients in every scoop. It is my first thing I do when I wake up in the morning. And you can go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to get yourself that special offer. I also want to take a moment to thank Inside Tracker for supporting us and for keeping me healthy. Inside Tracker makes sure that I can keep an eye on what is going on within my body without falling onto those old school mechanisms that don't really tell us that much of weight or just looking at BMI and other factors. I love that Inside Tracker allows me to look at my body from the inside, and you as a Running For Real listener can get 25% off your order or whatever service within Inside Tracker you choose to use by going to insidetracker.com/Tina. Thank you so much for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode as much as I did. I will see you next week.